First of all, I want to welcome you to the 2021 annual meeting of the Port Townsend Marine Science Center. And I want to thank you so much for coming. It is really wonderful to see so many familiar names. I am Diane Baxter. I am the board president of the Marine Science Center. I'm so excited to have so many people at the annual meeting to hear more about our big news. The board is delighted with the plan for the future for many reasons, but most of all because it will allow us to really amplify our impact as we pursue our mission. We will be able to reach more people. We're going to be a demonstration of green redevelopment. And the option that we have selected, which you will hear more about shortly, is an option that has a lower carbon footprint than if we were to build a brand new building. And this is a time when our mission is needed more than ever. Well, what should you expect today? Okay, we're going to start with a look back at 2020, and then we're going to look forward. There will be an opportunity for comments and questions, and I'm going to ask you to please put your questions in the chat. The chat will be monitored and curated so we can make sure to answer as many questions as possible. You may notice that because of the size of the group, we're going to keep everyone muted with videos off so that we can maximize the quality of the presentation. We expect to go for 1 hour, and we will endeavor to respect your time. Thank you. And now, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our fearless leader, Janine Boire. Janine?
Diane, thank you so much. You have one of the biggest hearts of anybody I know, and it's such a delight to work with you and the full board. I am so grateful. We'd like to start today with a really powerful thank you and a land acknowledgement. These lands and waters we occupy are the ancestral lands of the S'Klallam people, the strong people. We're grateful for their stewardship of this beautiful place since time immemorial through to present day. And we, the Marine Science Center, look forward to strengthening our partnerships with them into the future for a healthier Salish Sea. Thank you. So the theme of this annual meeting is looking back and looking forward. And both have some powerful messages for us. But we're going to begin with looking out to all of you. We're going to start with a question for all of you and think back to your beginning with the Marine Science Center. And a poll is going to come up on the screen here in a minute. And we're going to ask you to tell us how long you've been with the Marine Science Center, or back to your very first beginnings. And for some of you, it's going to go back decades, like our board president, Diane Baxter, who I think was one of our very first members back in the 80s. And for some of you, this is going to be the beginning. This meeting might be the very first time that you've really connected with the Marine Science Center. So we're going to be pulling that poll up in just a second. As Diane said, with the main point of an annual meeting is to report on the previous year, but the previous year really portends, and the groundwork that was laid in 2020 really is profoundly impacted in this year. So we're pretty excited about that. And maybe the poll isn't going to work, so I'll just press on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if you have been, please go ahead, and if you're up for it, just fill out the poll. And wow, that's amazing. So for those of you, I'm hoping everybody can see this, but it's a pretty flat distribution. It's not the normal curve, which is kind of exciting. Over 20 years, it's 12%. But the rest looks like a pretty even distribution. So that's pretty interesting. But what's changing? It's changing. The horse race is changing, but it looks like 0 to 2 years. And that is really a powerful message for us, because we arrive at a time for our planet that the message and the programs of the Marine Science Center are never more important. And so we need to amplify our work. And you're going to be hearing a little bit about some plans we have for doing that. And for those of you who are new to the Marine Science Center community, we're very grateful. And for those of you who've been with us over 20 years, thank you for your stalwart support. And for all those in between, we pledge that we will make it as fun and as powerful as we can. So if you would like to not see the poll anymore, there is a red dot within the poll window, and you can just click on that, or you can leave it up, either way. And if you happen to click the wrong red dot, you can always just sign back in. So the waiting room is done. So if you happen to click the wrong red X, just come on back. So we are very grateful. Well, that was really interesting, actually. So as I said, the main point of an annual meeting is to report on the previous year. And what a year it was. Near the beginning of 2020, we pledged to you, our community, that we would emerge stronger and better than ever. And I think you'll agree that we blew that pledge out of the water. To capture some of the 2020 highlights, our own Brian Kay has again produced yet another exquisite annual report. And this year again is a dynamic digital annual report. And you can find the link to that annual report in the chat. We'll be sending an email to everyone signed up for this Zoom. And then it will also appear on our website, probably tomorrow. So we encourage you to read through it and enjoy the beautiful imagery and the messages of power that this annual report evokes. And we're very grateful to everyone who not only made the annual report, but more importantly, created the results that we report in that report. That's the staff, the AmeriCorps, our interns, and volunteers. Thank you. We're not going to read through the annual report, obviously. We'll just be hitting a few of the highlights. But again, I encourage you to go to that link. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful production, and thanks to all those who made that happen. So while the staff and the AmeriCorps and interns were busily caring for 1,400 animals, over 1,400 animals in the aquarium, conducting 12 Protection Island Aquatic Reserve bird and mammal surveys, covering a total of almost 300 miles, serving over 700 underserved students through our Salish Sea science education programs, the board was busy at work. Our board of directors, while some boards were stepping back and saying, let's take a break, our board of directors was meeting twice as often and reinvigorating our strategic plan, which called for being in our new home by 2025. And we are thrilled to report that with our recent acquisition, we've accelerated that by a few years. We'll be opening phase 1 of the Marine Science Center in March of 2022, as we begin a year celebration of our 40th anniversary. Landing at Flagship Landing. This purchase advanced many of our goals for our new home, particularly those at the very heart of our mission: renovating a building that is 132 years old has a dramatic reduction in the carbon footprint of the project and is at the heart and soul of our mission. It also positions us perfectly to be a model of renovation for adapting to sea level rise and seismic retrofitting, and partnering with our town to develop a plan, a comprehensive plan for all of Water Street. And we're very excited about the city's response to us in joining hands in that effort with John Morrow at the head. But as Diane said in her opening remarks, at the very core of this decision to buy Flagship Landing is that we will be reaching about 10 to 12 times the number of people with our programs and exhibits designed to make us all better marine stewards. It also allows us to gradually move in over time and to develop a cohesive plan with our tenants at Flagship Landing. And we're very grateful to each and every one of the tenants of the building and urge you to join us in supporting them. So, looking forward, we're currently designing phase 1, which will open in the center space where Whistle Stop Toys used to be. We're envisioning a book and gift shop along with traveling exhibits. In phase 1, we really aren't planning on wet exhibits quite yet, but things will change regularly and be alive. Our own program director, Diane Quinn, is already thinking and has lined up 3 exhibitions in sequence. We Are Puget Sound, which is a beautiful exhibit adapted from a book by the same name. Also based on the book by Linda Mapes, Orca Home Waters, Shared Waters will open as a traveling exhibit. And a newly imagined walk through kelp forest. Less attractive, I'm not sure that's quite the right word, but less exciting perhaps, admin and development offices will also be located at Flagship. Then once we have opened phase 1, we will begin really developing our common shared vision for realizing phase 2, which is at least 3 to 5 years out. At the core, we'll be adapting to sea level rise and a seismic retrofit for the building. And that, along with permitting for our seawater intake and outflow, is a weighty job that is going to take multiple years. And throughout all of this, it is our fervent hope that we'll be able to remain partners in the park at Fort Worden in perpetuity, where we would love to continue to do summer camps forever, partner with our brilliant partners at the park. And we have heard indications that both state parks and the Public Development Authority at Fort Worden would like that very much too. So as with all of life, answering one question has opened up hundreds of thousands of more questions. And I'm guessing you, our community, have just a few. So as Diane Baxter, our board president, mentioned, we'll be taking a few questions, put those questions in the chat. And I will be endeavoring to answer them to the best of my ability. And you'll probably have some questions that we don't yet have answers for. So. No questions. Oh, people did not see the poll results. Brian? So Barbara O'Kelly, more on phase 2, please. That, yes. But first we need to open phase 1. We want to make sure that we begin well, and we want to not get ahead of ourselves. So we are focusing our energy right now on phase one. Christopher Kelly's asking, how do we retrofit an old building for sea level rise and seismic activity? So when we first launched into the possibility of this particular building, we contracted with some extraordinary experts in architectural redesign of a historic building, Signal Architecture from Seattle, with Arup Engineering, who's a worldwide engineering firm that specializes in seismic retrofitting and sea level rise. They are also based, the person that we're working with is based out of Seattle, and Anchor QEA, which is a specialist in shoreline redevelopment and returning shorelines to a greener, or in our case, bluer configuration. So there's lots of questions now. I'm not going to be able to keep up. So we had a very comprehensive, just to finish up on Chris Kelly's question, we had a due diligence report that was issued that showed that the structure and the bones of the building were really solid. There was a retrofit, there was a renovation done in the mid-80s that did a lot of work for seismic, but there isn't the cross bracing that we really feel like we need. And so there's more work to be done, and coming attractions. Okay. Diane Baxter, do other community members on Water Street have similar concerns about sea level rise? Absolutely. It's one of the key questions for owners as well as businesses. And one of the main tenets of John Morrow, our relatively new city manager, who worked on this issue when they were most recently in New Zealand. One of the key things of his tenure is to work on this very thing. How was the building purchased? Financed? How will remodel costs be covered? So the purchase is actually kind of a wonderful story that really tells us how strong our community is. We have been under a non-disclosure statement for a period of time. Because of that, we have not communicated in the typical way that the Marine Science Center does. And so it has been a big surprise to many people. And but in that process, we got approval to go, obviously, to our finance committee to really dig into the numbers. We've been working for months and months on a pro forma for not only the capital side, but the operating side. We looked at it every which way, and it's a really solid financial plan that the finance committee reviewed. And once we opened it up to the finance committee, within about 10 days, let me say that it is part of the DNA of our organization that we are very thrifty and very fiscally conservative. And so we had it with our wherewithal to finance and to pay for the down payment from within our reserves and investments. The challenge of being in a non-disclosure is there was not going to be a campaign. And so we had to look inside and see if we could make that work. We indeed could have made it work. But once it went to the finance committee, inspired by the board's initial gift combined of $60,000, within 10 days from just a handful of those people who were reviewing the plan, we had $500,000. It was stunning. So, and all from really current finance committee members, board members, and former board members. So we are extremely grateful. And it is seller financed. And Shannon's question about the remodeling costs. We are in the fullness of time, once we develop what phase 2 will really look like, there will be a capital campaign, but for the time being, we do not need to focus on that. We have received a number of grants that are going to be generously provide for programs and exhibits within phase 1. So it is a nice financial position to be in. What is the guesstimate when the pier will come down? Wow, if I had that crystal ball, Dan, I would be very happy. If it were to come down intentionally by state parks, it will not be before 2024. So that's as much energy as I can spend on that at this point. David Chan, will you bring more staff on as part of this expansion, both leadership and on the ground? What positions do you anticipate and when? That is an excellent question. And straight away, we are going to be advertising for a finance manager, very likely either operations manager or visitor services managers in the coming year. So there's lots to be done, and we will need a lot more people to do that. One of the beautiful things that's kind of emerging from within the tenants is they're entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we can really use help with is our entrepreneurial spirit. And even over the last couple of weeks in our conversations with them, they are stepping up in big ways to help us. So that is pretty exciting as well. Will there be a fundraiser specifically to support the retrofit? Oh yes, there will be. It will be a major capital campaign that, but it is 2 to 3, 4 years out. As is keeping with the Marine Science Center's long-standing tradition, there's going to be a lot of community input and a lot of focus groups on the Marine Science Center and our future. And that will take time. That will all take time. Once we've come up with that shared vision, then there will be a major capital campaign that we will launch, but we don't need to do that today, which I think is a definite relief to Liesl. And we can take the time to do it right, which is very exciting. Norma Bishop, do we envision every level? Oh, what a good question. With the Maritime Center, since you will bookend the town, Port Townsend, especially in regard to commercial entities. Absolutely. One of the first calls that I was able to make was when we got released from the non-disclosure agreement, was to Jake at the Maritime Center, to Teresa at Northwind Arts, and to Shelley Levins with the Historical Society. And the four of us are committed to forming an alliance that builds the relationship, not only up and down Water Street, but up and over to the fort. And I think really bringing a new vibrancy to downtown, and all four of us are very excited about that, looking at interdisciplinary programs and and really helping the town reemerge from this really challenging period that we've all just gone through. So excellent question. Will we have to vacate the building to do the seismic retrofit? And if so, where will we go? Another excellent question. And yes, in all likelihood, the building will not be habitable for a period of time. We don't know exactly how long. And that is something to be sorted out. So that's part of the question at hand. So another good question, Peter. How will the city help Flagship Landing park all those Marine Science Center visitors? I think this question is about parking. And so what we are encouraging people to do is get their steps in. The parking lot next to Flagship Landing is not our parking lot, but it is a beautiful, beautiful place to walk. And we, again, partnering with our fellow nonprofits, are going to be looking at re-enlivening public transit options, more bike parking, and getting potentially a drop-off location right in front of the building. So, Ingo, any live exhibits, or will the exhibits remain at Fort Worden? In other words, is Flagship going to be primarily an admin building? No. So let me break that up into parts. So think about this in phases. Phase one is mostly dry exhibits while we get our planning and permitting in place. Once we get our planning and permitting, architectural plans, we've run our capital campaign, then we will start to do the retrofit and the major renovation to the building. At that point, the live exhibits and our ambassadors from the Salish Sea will join us at Flagship Landing. Realistically, that's 5 or more years out. And the second part of Ingo's question, the Flagship building will not primarily be an admin building. It's going to be the flagship. And we fully hope that we will be able to turn what is now the museum building of the Marine Science Center into our field station for environmental learning, continuing those partnerships again with those other nonprofits, continuing forever, hopefully, to have summer camps run at Fort Worden, and to link the two facilities. Will the museum and pier still be open at the park? We're going to keep the museum and the aquarium open as long as we possibly can. As I said, State Parks has assured us that that the pier work would not start before 2024, much likely later than that. And they have assured us that we can stay there as long as it is habitable. And so we do plan on continuing that. So for a while, we are going to be operating on many different fronts with many different sites. And we are very cognizant of the challenges that lay ahead with the staff unity and clarity about communication of, if you're meeting someone at the Marine Science Center, do you go to Flagship, or do you go to the museum, or do you go to the aquarium? So we are going to need to double down on our clarity and communication around all that. Are we getting close to knowing the level of capital campaign? No, we are not. We are not anywhere close to knowing. Until we've developed our shared vision, we don't know how much we're going to be needing in the capital campaign. Uva, fantastic, and nod to skillfulness. Thank you. I want to reiterate what I was talking about the board. So it's March of 2020. No one really has a picture of the crazy rapids that are ahead of humanity as a whole across the planet. And our board says, we're going to double the amount of time we're committed to working and making this a powerful, powerful time for the Marine Science Center. And they did. So I'm very grateful to this board of the Marine Science Center, all of you, both for bringing your whole brains to it, to fully financially committing to it, to being the first money in. It sets us up for such success going forward. Okay, did we get through all the questions? Could it be? Let me show you something. If I'm going to share my screen, you were asking about phase 2, and we're not there yet. Just patience. The patience grasshopper is something that, let's see. But what I can do is show you a glimpse of what phase 1, an artist rendering, is going to do. So let's do this. And everybody's seeing this, okay? So this is the ground floor of the building here. This is the center space that we will open in phase 1 in March of 2022. And here's a glimpse of what it might look like. One of the things I love about that center space is it's all windows. There's no walls. So we're going to have to put some walls into it to fill out exhibits. But that is a glimmer of what we're thinking, along the lines we're thinking for the phase 1. And phase 1, think about phase 1 really as a test bed, if you will, trying out some ideas and some messaging. We know that we are going to need to broaden our communication skills. One of the key points and reasons for this decision is to reach far beyond the people that we already talk to. We're going to need to reach much further and be able to communicate with people who don't already understand that climate change is real and that it's having an impact today. And that we all need to join together in collective action for a positive future. That means that we need to understand and listen and develop a positive way forward for a much greater number of people than we currently serve. And, more questions, okay. Love the big mural. It probably will be something different than our logo, but we're not ready to, we don't know what that is yet. Let's see, will there be climate control in that space for sensitive display items? Absolutely. We are not really a collections-based institution. While we do have skeletons, but it will be all climate controlled for as we phase in the different skeletons and other parts of the collection. So Christopher Kelly has another good question. How does the area of the building compare to the area of the museum and wet exhibits? In other words, will you have more space? Or that's another, Chris, you always have great questions. You must be a scientist. So when back in 2016, when we really looked at ourselves in the mirror and said, can we really justify rebuilding the pier at Fort Worden, not just because it's going to be expensive, but because we know that it's not the best thing for the marine environment, was a really challenging thing to look at, because that has been our iconic home for nearly 40 years now. But because we walk the walk, or perhaps swim the swim, the board decided in 2016 that we would start looking for our home on the land. And when we did that, we took a thumbnail of who we are today, and combined all the space combined between storage, up on the hill at the fort, admin offices, and the exhibit spaces, all in, we are just under 7,000 square feet. Well, 6,500. And we said, okay, if we are going to double our impact, just as a rough thumbnail, does that mean we double our size? And we thought, okay, that takes us to about 12,000 square feet. We looked at what that would cost, and we thought, wow, that's a big number. Let's see if we can work within about a 10,000 square foot space. So that was our thumbnail estimate when we were starting to talk back in 2017 about what we really needed. And this building is just under 15,000 square feet. So it is bigger than our original projections, but we think that that offers some really interesting opportunities for collaboration and partnership, both potentially with current tenants and other organizations, so that we can really build that cohesive, long-term sustainable plan. Can we show the building mural? It was in the flyover. We don't have a mural. We don't have it designed yet. So no, I can't, because it's just in, yes, we should have one of those. That's the stage that we're at. When might Hope move into the new building with her tail intact? John Connolly, what a great question. So one of the things I'm going to reshare, let's see. For those of you who've been in the building, you probably have noted that there's these two beautiful entry bays here, and perfect, absolutely perfect for displaying skeletal, right, suspending them from the ceiling. And so we are envisioning eventually Hope in one, and we have several different skeletons. So we'll probably have a skeleton in each of these. Exactly when it will happen remains to be seen. Because we were under the non-disclosure agreement, it was really difficult, if not impossible, to make a lot more plans than we have within our tight group. And so now that the news is out, we will, as I said, develop the full plan the right way over the course of the next few years. But that is a big goal of all of ours, is to reattach to Hope's tail. Thanks for your comments. We are going to get, Chris, again, we're going to get a ton of walk-ins during tourist season in particular, and we plan to make that really make sense and be powerful communicators for a positive future for our planet. Tourists from all over the world come here, and what better place than Port Townsend for them to understand how we as human beings need to be better marine stewards. And can we hang the gray whale skeleton? Yes, we actually have two. One, as you might know, we use in education programs. So it would be kind of perfect to have one hanging and one for full, continuing to be used as the education program. And Peter, so is the long-term plan to move the marine exhibits to the new building and the pier goes away? Do you anticipate getting the needed permitting for pumping water out of the bay? That's yes, yes, and yes. So the long-term plan, phase 2, will be an integration of the museum and the aquarium into one cohesive, unified visitor experience at Flagship Landing, while we maintain the museum building at Fort Worden as our field station for education learning, continuing to do summer camps from there. And we've already put our toe in the water, if you will, on permitting for the seawater inflow and outflow. We've begun that process with the myriad of agencies that will need to be approving that. But that really is probably a 2-year process. And let's see. I hope you can accommodate the river otter tenant. Well, I think the river otter was there first. So I think, yeah, and we're not going to charge the river otter rent. And I think that we'll just, I think that's very funny. Okay. There are going to be a lot more conversations, a lot more, hopefully at some point soon, we'll be able to be in larger groups and have an in-person conversation and visioning sessions. And you'll be part of that. Our community will be part of that every step along the way. And we also thank you for your patience. This is a different approach because we haven't been able to share this exciting news all along the way. And some point, I would be happy to sit around on the beach and tell you some of the antics that that we've been through over the last year. One of the things that this last year, I think we were all looking for the silver linings in this horrific time. And one of the things that was easier during COVID was keeping that non-disclosure, what we affectionately started to refer to as the cone of silence. And for each of the people that we brought into the cone of silence, we needed to get approval. And as we brought more people in, I mean, we had a team of about 20 experts from Seattle that were doing the due diligence feasibility study for us. And there was one Wednesday in January of 2021 where there were 20 of us with cameras and clipboards and stuff standing around downtown Port Townsend. It was a rainy day and we saw no one. There was no one on the street. There was no one in the building. So it was a little easier to keep that non-disclosure during this year because there was no one there. And we laughed about that just a little bit. So you'll see, thanks Brian for putting again the annual report in the chat. It is absolutely beautiful as always. Brian does just gorgeous design work. Brilliant idea for a future, our planet. Thank you, Kathleen. So as always, we stand for questions. I know Diane Baxter and I are happy to have conversations with you. And with the completion of the annual meeting, I am happy to say that I'm going on vacation tomorrow for about a week. I'm going with my daughter. So if I don't reply right away, I am flying kites on the beach. And I'm so grateful. The staff, you've been remarkable over this horrific time. staying at it, being consistent, doing your jobs, rising to just the next level at every stage in these ambiguous times. So more fun to come. And I wish we could all clink glasses, and that would be really nice, but that's not quite where we are. So thank you. It's been a wonderful, wonderful response from the community, and we are very grateful to all of you.